Every year, governments pour billions of dollars into education. Yet students emerge from a 12-year academic gauntlet anxious, uninspired, and entirely unprepared for the realities of adulthood. We usually assume the education system is failing, a well-meaning institution that has somehow lost its way. John Taylor Gatto, a New York State Teacher of the Year with 30 years inside the classroom, spent decades observing this failure until he realized the common assumption was entirely backward. Compulsory schooling, التعليم الإلزامي, operates as a behavioral control mechanism. It performs exactly as its original architects intended. To support serious Arab intellectual content that investigates these systemic structures, please subscribe to the channel. Viewing the school as a high-functioning factory for mass compliance makes the daily routines inside the classroom finally appear logical. While the rhetoric of schooling speaks of enlightenment, the physical reality is defined by ringing bells, rigid time blocks, and physical confinement. Systemic massification requires a predictable level of cognitive dullness. We call it dumbing down, التسطيح, but for the institution, it is a necessary functional output. This 19th century industrial factory reveals the architectural baseline. Notice the vast, uniform interior and the highly structured layout designed for total oversight. This vintage classroom maps that factory logic onto children. The grid layout, the bolted desks, and the identical postures were imported directly from the industrial floor to manage the next generation of workers. This environment engineers a compliant workforce. It neutralizes the threat that independent, self-directed thinkers pose to a centralized command economy. The intellectual blueprint for this factory dates back to 1806, when Napoleon's amateur soldiers decisively defeated the Prussian army at the Battle of Jena. The Prussian state responded by creating a synthetic, mandatory schooling system designed to eliminate unpredictable individual action. This building represents the Prussian model, or a Nemujej el-Barusi. It functioned as a technology of subjection, training the population to prioritize obedience. American industrialists later imported this framework to manage the social chaos of a booming nation, seeking a way to establish permanent social order through the classroom. This system replaced an earlier culture of self-reliance. At age 12, David Farragut took command of his first ship, managing complex logistics that modern schools would deem impossible for a child. The Prussian model intentionally stripped away this early exposure to consequence. It enforced an artificial extension of childhood to keep young minds in a state of passive tutelage. Modern schooling remains rooted in this military behavioral conditioning, designed to subordinate the individual to the state apparatus. Inside these buildings, the official subjects serve as a cover story for the hidden curriculum, al-manhaj al-khafi. The first lesson is confusion. By forcing knowledge into fragmented, unrelated boxes, the system prevents the formation of a cohesive worldview. The school bell operates as Pavlovian conditioning. It arbitrarily terminates deep thought, training students that the schedule is more important than the pursuit of truth. Intellectual dependency follows. Students are conditioned to wait for a state-certified expert to tell them what to do and what to believe. Emotional dependency is enforced through an endless cycle of gold stars, demerits, and arbitrary grades. Children learn to seek systemic approval rather than internal self-worth. Standardized testing then sorts these students into predetermined social castes based on their level of institutional compliance. The glass house effect eliminates privacy. Constant surveillance ensures that no independent thought or unauthorized action goes unnoticed. If you are waiting for a bell to ring before you decide to subscribe, the conditioning is still in effect. You have the power to take the initiative right now. 12 years of this hidden curriculum successfully extinguishes intrinsic motivation, leaving a citizen dependent on the system for direction. A mass production society always requires uniform consumers, which necessitates the deliberate destruction of the family's unique, localized culture. By monopolizing the most energetic hours of the day, schools return children to their parents exhausted, leaving little room for meaningful family influence. Homework recruits parents as unpaid agents of the state, extending institutional authority into the home to monitor and enforce compliance. This severs the child's moral and intellectual bonds with their parents, transferring loyalty to peer groups and state-certified experts. Neutralizing the sovereign influence of the family remains the prerequisite for creating a unified and manageable population. The hidden curriculum produces an adult who is chronically bored, afraid of risk, and incapable of self-directed thought. A command economy driven by mass production finds this specific psychological profile highly valuable. Suppressing the creative impulse in childhood creates a lifelong reliance on mass consumption for emotional relief and identity. Untutored minds exploring the real world learn through failure and resilience, but the school system replaces this natural process with institutional dependency. The institution achieves its true goal. It massifies humanity for economic utility with measurable efficiency. Gatto argues that true education requires physical autonomy, exposure to actual risk, and early integration into the adult world. Homeschooling, التعليم المنزلي, and free learning, التعليم الحر, function as structural reclamations of sovereignty. They move beyond the scope of a mere curriculum change. Real self-esteem is built by conquering actual problems. Standardized tests and certificates of attendance cannot replicate that growth. It is illogical to expect the administrative machine that engineered compliance to provide the tools for freedom. For the Arab world, this critique demands a departure from imported educational models that prioritize obedience over innovation. The first step toward reform is rejecting the illusion of the institution and returning educational authority to the family and the community. Join the debate on reforming Arab education by subscribing. Reclaiming our children's minds marks a necessary act of